I made an entire fantasy world and crammed it into a 200-page book, and in this video I want to share the process I used to turn a really simple idea into a fully fleshed out adventure. This is Dragontown and the Darkness Below, my system-neutral fantasy tabletop role-playing game adventure. The Kickstarter for this hardcover and a box set is wrapping up in the next couple days, and I thought it would be fun to show you inside my fantasy world and explain my world building process. Now, before we jump in, I want to let you know that I'll be live streaming the end of this Kickstarter campaign. I'll be live here on this YouTube channel at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday the 23rd to wrap everything up, answer your questions, and talk about what comes next. It should be a little celebration, and I hope you will join. Okay, let's jump into Dragontown and start world building. Okay, first things first, we're going to talk inspiration. So you've heard the age-old question, where does inspiration come from? People often answer it very flippantly by saying that inspiration comes from everywhere, but I kind of think that's true, at least for my process. Now, there's a bunch of obvious inspirations in Dragontown. Chapter 3 is called The Windsong Woods, and it's definitely inspired by the Lost Woods from Legend of Zelda. The main goal of the chapter is all about finding this magical shining sword that will help the players defeat the darkness below. There's also some Miyazaki Studio Ghibli stuff in there about corrupted animals via Princess Mononoke. You know, movies, video games, comics, music, all of that stuff. You know how that kind of inspiration works, right? But when I say that inspiration comes from everywhere, I mean everywhere. So yeah, the Windsong Woods is based on the Lost Woods, but the actual words Windsong Woods is the name of a neighborhood that I drove past once. I thought the name sounded rad, and it inspired the whole idea of this song that actually protects the forest by affecting whoever hears it. It ended up inspiring this whole entire forest region of my world. So my first piece of advice is, if you see something that sparks your interest at all, like anything, write it down. This is kind of a practice that the more you do it, the more you'll get used to taking little notes and writing stuff down. You know, my sketchbooks are absolutely filled with little ideas that just hit me when I least expect it. And the Notes app on my phone, I got all kinds of, okay, let's just pull up the Notes app and I'll read off some of the latest things that I've written down. The Clog, Malaysian exploding ant. The Thunder That Wasn't, Zorn, Sentient Shovel, Hiccups That Never Stop, Super No Friendo, Habersham, the Fort in St. Augustine, on and on and on, right? Just random stuff, whatever it is, write it down. The idea is, if you're going to be building an entire world, you're going to need lots of ideas, and the way to get really good ideas is by taking those little pieces and combining them together. So my absolute favorite way to do this is to combine things by flipping expectations. So, for example, when I started writing this adventure, I knew that I wanted a big, cool dragon. And I knew I also wanted to do something with magic apples, kind of inspired by all of the apple orchards around where my family lives. So at first I thought this dragon was going to be the big bad evil boss that was endangering the whole valley of magic apple orchards. But, that's a little too straightforward, so I thought it'd be fun to flip it around and make the dragon the protector of this place. Still big scary dragon, but now it's more concerned with eating a horde's worth of magic apples than it is about terrorizing the land or whatever. And then I thought, okay, what happens if the protector of this valley goes missing? And then all of a sudden we have an adventure. So that's a pretty simple example, but I think it's an effective one. It also leads straight into the next piece of advice, and that is to set the tone of your world early. So if you've collected a lot of inspiration, this will be pretty easy. You can look at all the stuff that you like and think about why it appeals to you. So Dragontown is inspired by Zelda and the Neverending Story, but it's also inspired by Elden Ring and the Alien movies. Obviously, by all the artwork in these pages that I'm flipping through, you can tell that this is a lighthearted, whimsical fantasy world, but there also is a lot of danger and weird creepiness going on too. So I want Dragontown and all the locations in the book to be fun and fantastical, but there's still the darkness lurking below. Sure, the Bat Cult want unending darkness and are willing to sacrifice Lightwalkers to do it, but they're also super friendly and make tasty fig jam as well. So if you can figure out the tone of your world early, write it down. Just a few descriptive words will do. Keep that handy the whole time you're thinking about your world. And really, a thought-out tone can act as like a sort of guiding North Star for your entire world. It's like instant flavor for everything you come up with, and it'll keep your world feeling consistent, like a real place, even if it's a fantasy world and totally unrealistic. Okay, we've got our inspiration and we've got our tone. Now let's start actually filling up this world. I'm sure you've heard the standard advice, start small and let things grow slowly. Obviously, I really stand by that, but I think there's a little bit more to it. With Dragontown, I started really small, just a single town, and then each chapter of this adventure adds a new location and slowly expands the world. And this has been so much fun to create my own world without having the pressure of coming up with everything all at once. Sometimes I think starting with an entire location is still too big. Like, start with a single character or a single magic item or just a single little idea. The Emperor of Worms chapter started with me wanting to do something with this little mosquito character. I just really like drawing this little guy, and the idea of a kind of creepy, annoying, buzzing quest giver that the players have to interact with before they can move forward just seemed fun to me. You know, this little mosquito character is all about sucking blood, so maybe you can kind of see where the adventure goes from there. Actually, interacting with this NPC leads the players on an entire quest through the inside of a giant worm. It kind of unlocked this whole bug world for me. Or, okay, here's a good example. Chapter 4 is the Shadespeare Mountains. I wanted one of the chapters in this adventure to flip the idea of orcs versus elves, that concept that comes up all the time in fantasy. So I had this idea for a spear, a magic item spear that could slice through rock, and basically that led me to create this entire mountain range. So the orcs are the sort of stewards of this place. They're so in tune with the mountains that they're able to craft these spears that can bend and shape the very rock. And then these elves come and start digging and ignoring the sanctity of this place. And it totally leads to an entire conflict that is like basically this entire chapter of the book, just from that one magic item. And you can see how easy it is to just start building and expanding right away. It's like way easier to start small and then grow. Plus it gives players or readers or whoever actual substance to hold on to. An individual character is way more interesting than a bunch of plot and backstory. And that makes me think about my third piece of advice. Save all of the lore for later. I get the appeal of wanting to write down histories dating way back and come up with all the gods and emperors and all this and that. But let that stuff reveal itself when it needs to. So I actually haven't talked about it too much, but one of my favorite things to do in these adventures and each chapter is just sprinkle in little snippets of lore, kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy. I have hints of other locations and cosmology stuff here and there, just kind of as it pops into my head. I throw it in the adventure, but don't go deep into it. It's not the main focus, and that's cool because then I don't have to plan the entire thing out. I can just let it stew and come up with stuff naturally, add things as as I'm building my world. And I don't know about you, but for me, I'm not as interested in big picture stuff. So I don't even have a name for my world yet. Right now, I'm only interested in Dragontown and the area around it and the darkness below. You know, inevitably, when the big picture stuff starts to creep in, it'll become important, and then I'll have to flesh it out, and I'll be ready to do that, you know? So, okay, like the darkness below. Let's take the half of the title of this book, right? The actual big bad of the adventure. I knew I wanted this ancient magic-eating darkness to be the main villain of the story, right? Like really epic stuff. But I didn't want it to be an immediate threat from the beginning, all spelled out exactly what it is. I think it's way cooler for the players to find out slowly as they progress through the adventure. So without spoiling too much, as the players go on this adventure, they'll learn about the dangers of the darkness below. Its minions start creeping out towards the surface, and there are characters that warn the players about this ancient danger from long ago, and just little hints here and there that slowly build the world. So it wasn't actually until chapter 11 that I figured out the origins of this darkness below creature. And I decided that it was actually plucked out of the night sky by these astral giants hundreds of years ago. And the darkness is actually like the manifestation of the emptiness of space, you know, like the void of magic and comfort. And the darkness below actually comes from above, but whatever. The players don't need to know that until the very end when they're getting close to facing this big bad boss. And even then, the history is only hinted at in the immediate story, in what they're actually engaging with in that moment. So usually these astral giants are immortal. They're like totally indestructible. The players can't hurt them at all, right? But one of them, the one that grabbed the darkness, like died instantly, and now the other giants are super freaked out. It's a really simple premise, but it goes a long way to showing how powerful the darkness below is, right? And it gives some backstory. So having that sort of detail come out as the story unfolds and the players are interacting with the world, it just makes it way more interesting than, you know, dumping a bunch of lore onto the players and hoping that they remember it while they're more concerned with going on their actual adventure. And that leads me to the next point of advice. If you're building a world for a tabletop role-playing game, build it in a way that ignores the players. Now, this sounds like some super counterintuitive advice, especially with all the stuff that I just said, but I think this is where the fun of playing RPGs really comes in. If you start small and build locations that have characters that are going about their lives regardless of the players, when the players actually show up and start getting involved, things will pop off and change, and that's when the real magic starts to happen. So there are 12 chapters in this book, and my hope is that each table that plays this campaign will have a totally different adventure. Sure, I hope most of them will defeat the darkness below in the end, but how they get there, who they meet, their experiences along the way, and how their actions affect this world will all be completely unique. So if you're building a world, get inspiration from everywhere, keep the tone consistent, let the world be small at the start and grow from there, forget all the backstory junk, and let your players get in there and mess things up. I promise your world will be way more interesting if you do. Okay, I hope this little peek at Dragontown and the Darkness Below has inspired you to work on your own world. I've loved making my own, and if you're interested in running this adventure or just using it as inspiration for your own world, definitely check out the Kickstarter. The campaign ends in a couple of days, and I'm so stoked on all the stretch goals that we've unlocked, and this book and the box set. There's a whole box set I didn't even really talk about. It's just going to be so awesome. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. for the live stream. See ya!